Go by Manny. I'm a professional development specialist here at ISAC. Thank you all for joining us. Some of you may have joined our earlier webinar on the new FSAID process. And so for those who are new and didn't join earlier, well, welcome as well. So just a few things you may have heard. WebEx make an announcement. So we do record our sessions and upload them on our website. We're letting everyone know that there's going to be a little bit of a delay. Um, Longer than usual in terms of us uploading our content up on our website, the recordings. But rest assured, those will get on soon. We also have enabled the Q&A feature, so if you have any questions throughout this webinar, please use the Q&A feature. Being joined by my colleagues up here, you'll see as panelists who are available to answer any questions you may have. We are also offering continuing education credits and PD hours for this webinar. And then we also, you can see any upcoming trainings that we have on our website at isac.org/PD, where you can see more information on upcoming webinars. And for those who do attend, we are sending a PDF copy of the presentation as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started with our presentation on the Financial Aid Application Completion Initiative. So a little bit about ISAC for those who are unfamiliar with ISAC. So our mission is to provide Illinois students with information and assistance to help make education beyond high school accessible and affordable. We also administer scholarships and grants across the state of Illinois, one of them being the Monetary Award Program, the MAP grant being one of the largest need-based programs of its kind in the country. We also, in our Division of College Access and Outreach, provide professional development opportunities on navigating the financial aid process on other various topics like this one, and others listed in that green bubble. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Illinois Financial Aid Application Graduation Requirement, as well as dive into our Financial Aid Application Completion Initiative. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So the Universal Free Application for Federal Student Aid Completion Policy, so it's FAFSA. So there are 12 states that have already adopted this policy, and they all sort of adopted it. Well, Illinois wasn't the first; we were the second. Louisiana was the first, but I don't know if it's our credit or Louisiana's credit, but a lot more states have joined since Illinois joined, and they've seen how successful it was in getting more students to complete the FAFSA. So each state will determine their own criteria. So every state is different. Illinois' policy came into effect in the school year of 2020-2021. If you can recall what was happening, it was the height of the pandemic. And so a lot of states are watching their FAFSA completion data drop by double-digit points. Illinois was the only state during that time to see a positive increase in completion rates. And it had to have been because of the FAFSA requirement. And before our policy took in effect, our completion rate was in the 60% range. We always found ourselves to be in the top 10, and now with the FAFSA completion policy in place, we're sort of a top 5 state. So we've always been a state with high FAFSA completion data, and that's all thanks to the work that you all do with your students. So definitely pat yourselves in the back for that work. And now we're a top 5 state, so it's even better. So what is the Illinois Financial Aid Application Requirement? So that requires all public high school seniors to complete a financial aid application as a prerequisite to receiving a high school diploma. You could either file a FAFSA, file an application for state financial aid, which essentially is the alternative application for Illinois financial aid, or they can file a non-participation form, also known as a waiver form. So we'll dig more into that waiver later on in this presentation. So what does this all mean for schools? So every school district is required to provide support or assistance for each student to comply with the graduation requirement. And for many schools who are simply just bogged down with work, we do recommend just simply working with an ISAC core member. right? You can find your nearest ISAC core member. We'll have more information later on in this presentation. And they can go out and do these types of work on your behalf to help reach and work with your students. That is their goal, is to help students navigate the college and financial aid application process, especially first generation students. This policy is not intended to keep students from graduating, intended more to help students by providing them with the information that they need to ensure that financial barriers to college may still exist, but that there is free money available to them to help pay for college, all based on financial need. And parents um, and students who are unable to complete a FAFSA or a waiver, a school principal can attest with a good faith effort was made to assist that student in filing an application or waiver. So again, this isn't meant to stop a student from receiving a high school diploma or for them from graduating. If a situation in which you're trying to reach out to your parents and just not getting any success, or the student just not getting any success, your principal at your school can document that, and that will be enough to not keep that not prevent that student from graduating. The goal is to still keep students from graduating. We haven't heard anything from students not graduating because of this. I know that's been a concern for a lot of schools. So a little bit more about the waiver or opt-out form, formerly known as the financial aid application non-participation form. Now, what it does is it indicates that the parent or guardian or student understands what the FAFSA and the alternative application for Illinois Financial are and has chosen not to file an application. A little bit about both applications is that the FAFSA is the primary application for most students. However, if you're working with a student who is not eligible to complete a FAFSA. Remember, a FAFSA is used to apply for the Pell Grant, which is the federal grant, as well as the MAP grant, which is the Illinois version of the Pell Grant. And so for a student who is not eligible to complete a FAFSA, may be eligible to complete an alternative application. And so when they reach out to the alternative application, well, the ISAC's website, they can see the filtering question to determine which application of those two to file. Did want to provide that contact, but alternative application is just for MAP grant consideration only, just in case for those. I'm not sure who's in the sort of virtual room, but I just like to provide that context to know that it's an either or, not a both. So students and parents must use the form created by the Illinois State Board of Education, which is what we'll talk about later on. School districts cannot create their own waiver form. They have to use the ISB form. The files must be kept with the school and kept in the student's graduation file or the high school file. The form is available in English and in Spanish, and it becomes available every year when the FAFSA and alternative application becomes available. So we know with the 24-25 FAFSA cycle just opening up in late December, and sort of the FAFSA still being in a soft launch period, where we saw the waiver form become available as well. So a little bit about the physical version of it. So you can see that it has school district information. This is where students will have to manually input this information. Where they input their their information, parent and guardian information, certification of financial aid, application knowledge, parent, guardian, or student signature. So it all depends. If the student is over 18, only the student needs to sign, or if they're emancipated. But if the student is under 18 at the time of this application of this form, completing this form, they do need a parent signature in there as well. So some frequently asked questions. So the form, and this is why it's really important. The form is front and back. And so if you're showing this to a student, or if a student sees, it's important that they read the back, because the back has a lot of important information. It has frequently asked questions, common situations about the FAFSA, lets them know what are the current monetary values of the Pell Grant and the MAP grant, letting them know that, hey, if you don't do this, this is how much money you're leaving out on the table. And basically all this information we want students to read and understand before they submit this waiver. So we don't want students just to come across this waiver form and just complete it because maybe their parents are at work right now. They're not able to complete their parent data on the FAFSA. That's not what this form is intended for. It's really intended to provide students with the information and to ensure that school districts, schools, etc., are providing students with the information and assistance they need to help make a decision about life after high school. So there is a way to track data on waiver completions. So this is great. See the happy face. So the Financial Aid Application Completion Initiative is available to assist high schools in identifying not just FAFSA or alternative application completion data, but as well as waiver completion data. And from there, you can always identify students, and maybe you know them personally. You know, like, well, I know that student for sure should be completing a FAFSA, and I see that they've completed a waiver form. So let me go back and let me assist that student, ensure that they complete the FAFSA because they're eligible for it, right? So this initiative allows schools to keep track of that information. And I think what I really like about this is that it really helps you, and by you I mean anyone who's an administrator of the FAFSA completion data at your school. And if you're not, we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but this is something only available for high schools. So if your high school is signed up, talk to your principal because they're the ones who are the sort of gatekeepers of this information and they can assign administrators to the account so that you can have access to this FAFSA data. Maybe you're new in the school, or maybe you think in your position, you think you would benefit from knowing this information. And all this happens in our gift assistance portal, also known as Gap Access portal. So what's new? I already saw someone ask this question. But yes, the non-participation form is now online. That's new as of this year. Another thing to note is that the year that the form is available, unsure what happened there, but can folks hear me okay?
Good, Manny.
Okay, I'm having look like some internet issues, but okay, sub-zero temperatures, we'll just blame it on that. All right, but as I was saying, so what I want folks to know is that because we want students to be completing the 24-25 FAFSA because that's the year in which they're requesting aid. The FAFSA form goes by academic year, or the non-participation form goes by academic year. So this is the 2023-2024 sort of waiver period. And then students are essentially waiving to complete the 24-25 alternative application or the 24-25 FAFSA. So in case you see those two different dates, because the waiver form goes by academic year and the FAFSA goes by, as well, it goes by their financial aid cycle year, which is always based off the year in which they're requesting financial aid. So, so students can now complete the waiver on our student portal website under program applications and status checks. So I put the link on our website on this page, so you can access that through that tab. Now, student or parents will each need to create a student portal account. So if a parent is completing this on behalf of their student, well, they can create the account on there in order to access that non-participation form. And once they complete the form will automatically populate in your class roster in Gap Access portal. So again, students who are over 18 can complete the waiver themselves. So if they're under 18, the parent needs to complete it on their behalf. So to access this, I also included a link with instructions of how to complete the form. So if this is something you wanted to download and have in your repertoire when working with students and their families who may need assistance with completing this form, I did provide instructions on here. But again, this whole form is 100% digital, right? You won't be able to access this form, the physical form. If you do, you will need to email ISB, and in that they will inquire as to why you're asking to complete a paper version. So it is entirely moved online. So to access, as I mentioned, you go to studentportal.isac.org. You go under the application portal section, which you can see all of our other applications that are available on our student portal website. Scroll all the way down until you find the non-participation waiver form. So you complete that, you may need to create a student portal account, and you go through that tab and you start entering your demographic information. But once you get that, you want to make sure that you're in the right place and you're in the waiver form. So when you get to this step, and so this is where you can see that we put under parent or guardian. So once you enter the school name, the school district name will automatically populate based upon that information. And what's really important is that you're writing the student's full name, right? So my name is Manuel Talavera. Of course, earlier I went by Manny. So what will happen in the back end is all this information gets matched with the school roster that's on file. So ISAC gets this information, gets roster data for public schools from the Illinois State Board of Education and uses that information to match it. So what can happen is you're not going to see a Manny Talavera, and so it may come out that they didn't complete it. And so it's really important that they use their full name, or I have students constantly say their government name, try to make sure they're using their full name. And if can't stress this enough, the students over 18, then they can just complete it in the student section. Don't have to worry about entering their parent information here in the middle that you can see. And then once they complete this information, they click continue to certification. And then continue to certification, this is where they will see the school information automatically populated. It'll see that the school district is on there, all that gets populated once they enter that information. They can see their certification statement. They will see essentially how much money is being left on the table. And if we're looking, this may be a little bit hard for someone, but you can always zoom in and not impact anyone else's sort of viewing on WebEx. But you can see that this is updated information with current 24-25 Pell and MAP grant data. So looking at 7,395 for Pell and 8,400 for the MAP grant. And this is a free money that students will essentially be leaving out on the table, which is over $15,000 of money, almost 16,000 of grant money, which is all based on need, financial need, not on grades or GPA or anything like that. That students will essentially be leaving on the table. So I think once students see that and it registers on their mind, like, I could be eligible for this. All I have to do is complete a FAFSA. I want to go ahead and do this. Okay. And then they can just submit their name, check that box, and they will sign and complete that form. And it will automatically populate in Gap Access if everything goes well. What I tell students all the time to download the form, save it just in case, but all this gets sent to the school automatically. But as a precaution, just always download the form, maybe take a screenshot of it so that they have a copy of that just in case. So how does the school show compliance with a graduation requirement, with this graduation requirement? So in Gap Access, schools can download an Excel file with the list of their senior class. We'll talk more about that when we get to the data portion of this presentation under Gap Access. The downloaded file can be saved or printed, and I think that it's good for schools to always do that and have that. And we'll talk about too if you're working with students and you notice they're not populating. We'll go over some troubleshooting items. Now, this requirement must be met by July 31st of the graduating class year, along with other ISB graduation requirements. So some FAQs that we get all the time regarding this waiver form. So if a student completes a waiver and they decide to complete a financial aid application later, what happens? Really nothing. In fact, we encourage that. Just because they complete the waiver, it does not stop them, preclude them from completing the FAFSA alternative application in any way, shape, or form. We won't stop them. Federal student aid won't stop them. In fact, we still want to encourage students to complete a FAFSA or alternative application, whatever they're eligible for. That is the important piece here. And if they complete the waiver form, that's fine. But again, we want them to complete the FAFSA or alternative application. So school counselors, if they want to access that, they can access it whenever the form is available. PDF version can be found on our website where we have contact information from ISB where you can reach out to them directly to request that PDF version. And if you're having any trouble getting parents or students to sign the waiver, that waiver, there are other things you can do if you're running into those obstacles. Is that your principal, as I mentioned earlier, can document that. And if they're still struggling to get in, they document it. Then it's no fault of your own. The principal tried. They attested that they made a good faith effort. They reached out. Whatever that means to the school. I know that good faith effort. What does that mean? But say, for example, if you reached out to them, you emailed them, everything short, but grabbing the student by the hand and physically having them complete the waiver, anything short of that, uh, will assist in that. So a little bit more, just doing a quick temperature check. I like to see the flow of the questions, see where they're at. Yeah, definitely we are sending a PDF version, copy of this presentation to attendees. Okay. So a little bit more about the Financial Aid Application Completion Initiative, formerly known as the FAFSA Completion Initiative, but to be more inclusive because of the alternative application, we've transitioned to Financial Aid Application. Data mention, I know it's a longer title, but in financial aid, we know that long titles, acronyms, those are limitless. So when it comes to data matching, I mentioned this earlier. So ISAC, we have a data agreement with ISB, the Illinois State Board of Education, where we get that data for public high schools and match that. We match that with financial aid application data. We match that for waiver form completion data. And so all that information is important. And what we do is once that information is matched, once we are matching completion data, which we're not doing right now, we will start doing that probably later on in January or in February as we start getting, as schools start getting ISERs, federal student aid, if you aren't aware, made an announcement in mid-December, early December that ISERs won't get processed until end of January. What that means is that an ISER is an institutional student information record, and schools use that to package a financial award letter or a financial aid offer to the student. So it packages all the financial aid that the student is eligible for to receive if they attend that school. And so that is processing delayed. And so once those start getting processed, ISAC will start matching that data because that day the information is not released by the Department of Education yet. So once that happens, we will update that roster every day. We'll update that information every day so you can see in-gap access that new information. However, on our website, if you go to our ISAC's financial aid application completion data on our website, that gets updated every Monday. So you may not see that reflection on the website every week, but in the gap access portal, you will see that every day. So as I mentioned, data matching will be delayed due to the FAFSA launching in late December. That data matching is not yet available. Now, I did hyperlink our financial aid application completion webpage on here because once that becomes available, this is where you can find that information once data is being processed in January, later in January 2024. So when it comes to utilizing that data in the financial aid application completion initiative, so users, you will have access to a wide variety of data. You can keep track of students' financial aid completion data. You will see who hasn't completed a financial aid application and who hasn't. And even those who have, you will see their student aid index. For those who aren't familiar, the FAFSA went through a wide variety of changes. The student aid index, the SAI, replaced the expected family contribution, the EFC, so that's the new acronym. They will indicate whether the FAFSA was filed and if they have a student aid index or they don't have a student aid index. And this is really important because then you can when looking at your roster list, you can say, okay, which students really need the assistance right now? They haven't completed their FAFSA. I can help them in completing their FAFSA. And if there's students who've completed it, but they don't have an SAI, you can help them and navigate. Why don't you have an SAI? Let's go look at your application to see what's happened. Maybe you need some additional information that they didn't provide. Students like to think they're done with something, they're not really done. So it just provides that extra eye sort of in the sky that you can kind of see everything. And you can also track students completing the waiver form as well. So when it comes to high school available data, again, names of students, aggregate data for the entire student body, class data, number of MAP eligible students. You can see that Pell eligible students as well as the student aid index ranges. So you can kind of see exactly where that sort of falls under. And what's new as I what's also new with the student aid index compared to the EFC. The EFC, the lowest it could be was 0, but student aid index, the lowest it can be is negative 1,500. So you can see that range. There's various negative numbers, at least I've seen, helping students complete the FAFSA thus far. So when it comes to class roster functionality, so uploading the most up-to-date list of current seniors to ensure that you have the most up-to-date information. So keep in mind, for public high schools, you no longer have the option to go in and physically upload an entire roster. Only private schools can do that right now. What public schools can do right now is you can always go in and remove a student, add a new student. So if you notice that, for example, if I were a student in your school and you have Manny Talavera as the registration information, but everything is Manuel because it's my government name, you can go in and change that to put Manuel, and things should match now because of that. You want to make sure everything's correct. Birthdays, names, and when you uploading that information for private high schools, you go to FAFSA upload and you upload last name, first name, any middle initial, and then their date of birth as well. Now, when it comes to reports, I mentioned a little bit about this. Class reports are available to download and shared when needed. This will be available once we get FAFSA data and you can see all that information. Reports will include what I'd mentioned earlier. You can see date of birth, SAI, FAFSA completion rates, whether they completed the waiver, etc. You can sort that data however you want. And you click on Excel report and it'll download that as an Excel file for you that you can use for data reporting as well as for compliance. So if you run into some common issues, so we put the slide together to highlight what are some troubleshooting and sort of reasons why your FAFSA alternative application may not show as filed. It could be the timing of when the application was filed, so do give it a little bit of time. The student's name does not match with what the school has on record due to maybe their first name and last name being switched, the student filing with the wrong name, or there's an issue with that they filed with. Student may have entered a middle initial, students entered a suffix. I know for me, I'm the third Manuel Talavera, but there are differences between my grandfather and my dad having middle names and me not having a middle name. So I've always used like the third. I've always gone and said like, well, Manuel Talavera the third. And if I did that in the application, that will not match. So just want to be very careful with these things. You always want to go with, and if it's a confusion for students, you want to go with what applications they have, what their social security card has on file for them. And then when it comes to adding and deleting functions, you can always go in and add and remove a student by the date of birth. You can delete records, all that information on here. Once you save that record, you won't be able to see that student's information. So if you do that by mistake, you can always go back in and manually add that student. Now, as I mentioned, this feature is only available, the Financial Aid Application Completion Initiative is only available to high schools. So if your high school is interested in participating, you do have to have your high school principal sign up for it. And if your high school is already signed up, you can have your principal assign you as an administrator so you can have access to this information. If you think you need to have access to this information, talk with your principal. They will then reach out to school services. For signing up your school principal, they have to certify and agree to the terms and condition of the Financial Aid Application Completion Initiative. Sign that participation agreement for Illinois education entities. Again, it's only available for high schools. Your then school designates privileges to authorized users. So in those authorized users, you do have to create and follow these two-step verification process once you create that to confirm your identity each and every time. Once those steps have been created, you will have access to the student data. If you have any questions or like to sign up, we ask that you contact ISAC School Services. You can either call them by phone at 866-247-2172 or reach out to them in their email address at isac.schoolservices, one word, @illinois.gov. So previously we had our contact as Mary Lewis. Just as an FYI, if she was your go-to person, we've always said like that's our go-to person. Reach out to her; she will help you. She retired, so if you send emails to Mary Lewis, they will bounce back. So again, if you have any questions about Gap Access, reach out to ISAC School Services at illinois.gov, especially those who want to sign up or they have more technical questions that they may have. So once we start getting FAFSA data, we will then start assigning medals to them. Of course, this is something we do until the end of until July 31st. So we have your recognition of excellence awards. So we have 4 levels: platinum, gold, silver, and bronze, which essentially is a recognition of efforts from high schools that focus on supporting their students and families through the financial aid process. So recognition is based off the school's financial aid application completion rates. We use bronze starting off at 65%, as that is essentially our average level that we have been. We set that as our sort of benchmark. Completion rates are calculated based off the school's class roster that were provided in one of 2 ways: ISB provided data or private schools who upload their own data. So a little bit about those completion performance metrics. So, and you see the link where that page will be. Now, mind you, this is not going to be uploaded yet until we start getting those completion rates in there yet. But schools are designated one of the following recognitions. If you're a platinum, is you have at least a 95% completion rate at your school, 85% for gold, 75% for silver, and 65% for bronze. So again, that 65% is typically where the state falls on there in average. We usually about 67, 69%, but we've kept that at 65%, as that was our benchmark since the middle of pandemic. So we kept that as such, and schools can compare their information on here. They can go to year to year. I know it's kind of hard to see, but if you zoom in and you see a little hamburger menu next to financial aid application completed by school 2022, 2023, they could then filter out different information if they specifically want to see schools in Chicago or in their school district or in their area. So you can see again, what are their neighboring schools up to? Helpful for that. So that pretty much does it for the content of this presentation. I do have some additional information that I wanted to go over. The first is our First Gen Scholars Network. So this is a resource that is free. It is available to students who are first in their family to go to college, meaning a first generation college student. So they can join now. You can see the student portal link where students can join. We host different events throughout the year. And different resources that we have available. Students are connected with a sort of near peer mentor, someone who themselves were a first generation student that can help the student navigate that process and help answer any of the questions that they may have. We're there to be an extra resource for that student because we want them to graduate. And then for schools, we have our FAFSA communication toolkit available from ISAC. So this is new. This resource is developed to assist any practitioners, any college access professional in communication efforts with parents and students. We highlight best practices, any changes that you need to make regarding this year's application. So this is something that we'll be updating on a periodic basis because again, we know that financial applications can change, information gets updated. So we will be updating this as well on a continuing basis to ensure that whatever information you're getting out to schools, you're getting the most accurate information as possible, especially if you're in a school that's struggling to come up with your own content. You can just use our content, simply download it, make any edits that you need to make, and share that information accordingly. We have different templates, emails, robocalls, you name it. So also we're still doing these. We started this in November on through the end of January. You can join us for our half-day training on financial aid updates across the state. We will be going over the key changes to the 24-25 FAFSA. Training again is free. I'll leave this up for a few more seconds so that you can take I was gonna say picture, but you can just hover your camera over the QR code. And then for those who are requesting CEs and PDs, we also ask that you provide your feedback for today's session. My colleague Tommy opened up the chat, so it's not going to be in the Q&A, it's going to be in the chat. So if you need to make a copy that link, submit it, put it in your URL. We do ask that you complete the evaluation by 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, January 18th. And if you are requesting PDs to please include your EIN, which is your Illinois Education Identification Number, so that we know that you're requesting PDs and we can get you the appropriate documentation you need for your records. So again, it's up in the chat. We'll leave it up there for a few more seconds in case you need it. So thank you, everyone. Again, not the QR code, but the evaluation link is still up in the chat in case you need it. You don't have to complete it right now. You do have until 4:30 p.m. on January 18th, which is Thursday. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at isac.outreachtraining@illinois.gov. You can also sign up for ISAC's e-message service to receive the latest news and updates on our website. So if you haven't signed up, go to isac.com, isac.org/e-messaging, and you can sign up and get updates to, say, like the map suspension date or anything that comes up for that matter. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. Again, the chat's going to be up there with the survey, the evaluation link if you need it. We'll stay up for a few more seconds to help answer any questions that are still coming down the pipeline. But thank you everyone. Stay warm and have a great rest of your week. Thanks.